Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about Stack Overflow. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, why is it that Stack Overflow and other programming forums are so overwhelmingly hostile? Well, that's a very difficult question for me to answer because to me, like Stack Overflow to me is sort of like a it's sort of like I don't know a nice way of saying it. It's sort of like a prostitute. It's a website that if it has what I need, I'll go and get it and get like an answer to some arbitrary thing. If it's not that, it's some Medium article or something like that. But I don't really frequent these sorts of forums because, as I like to say, in the immortal words of Rick, it's not a place for smart people, usually. And what I mean by that is not that there are not smart people there, it's just that forums are usually the place where either people who, like some people who really do want to help and are very good at it and so forth, but it's usually a place where people who have a lot of opinions about right and wrong, and they like I don't care enough about the common opinion of like everybody to want to sift through the in many cases fairly uninformed opinions of people who have either a lot of political agendas with like emotions and shit like that about things that they should really not make into such a big deal, for to deal with all of that just so that I might get to listen, read a post by someone, or like get to talk to someone who really knows their stuff. I'd like my communities or my forums to be a bit more exclusive than that, and that's why I truly enjoy working and collaborating rather on specific projects within some specific thing we're doing, rather than just doing this sort of thing. It's sort of the same model that you have with like these bigger high prestige open source projects where you have seasoned veteran programmers who sort of like prove that they are mature, they prove that they can do the job and they're really experienced, and they get like invited in to continue collaborate on things like standards committees and so forth and so forth. I mean, things can become a little bit unpleasant there as well, but at the very least you have some type of base layer. It's sort of like the first level of the call center in like these different companies, where you've at least filtered away the people who have like the basest, like the most basic of basic opinions and thoughts on things, so you can get like a level over and just talk to people who have gotten a little bit farther in their personal development, usually. And so the reason why, in my experience, people get very hostile about this is because of the same reason why people get hostile over countries, or what sport they're playing, or what race you have, or why, this and that. And that is that they get it into their head that there is better and worse. And then, of course, you also forget that once upon a time, you were a beginner. And when you get enough quote unquote stupid questions from people who are less skilled than you are, you start looking down on them because, of course, they're lesser to you. When I would like to sort of point out to people that if we had that attitude in this, like if we could really truly look at our behavior in the way that is appropriate, at least what I believe, we would start to realize that that sort of behavior is really down to prejudices against other people, and you have a lot of exceptions to this value system. And if you could reflect on that value system a little bit, you would realize that when you look down on a junior or look down on someone else who has who doesn't really know and so forth, the frustration that you're usually feeling is the curse of knowledge, which is that you think that this is so obvious, and to them it might not be so obvious, and you forget that they are in a different place in their personal development. And so usually what you do in that scenario is that either you understand that and you take a moment for yourself, breathe a little bit, because if you want to know, guys, how many times I have gotten the exact same question that I feel is completely basic, it's something that, seems like it's not a problem to figure this out on my channel, you would be surprised. But the thing is, I don't get in the face of the person who asks that question for the 100th or maybe thousandth time, because it's a different person. And that tells me something. Everybody wants to figure this out, and although I can pity the person because I feel like this is it's sad that, I don't know, people still want to ask. It's like they've been brainwashed. They actually say things like, what is the best programming language to learn in 2022? And I'm like, are you making the title to the YouTube video? Because that is literally what the keyword fanatics, content creators, are using in order to get you to click on something. It's like you've been brainwashed to this point, but they don't know any better, and that's okay. So I, as the person who might know the answer or gets the question, I have to take a step back, just breathe a little bit if it annoys me, and realize that I'm dealing with a child. I'm not an actual child, but a child. It's the same thing. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't really remember on places like Stack Overflow and so forth, where if you start thinking about people who ask quote-unquote stupid questions as children, I mean, guys, how many times someone who's 6 years old is going to ask you a bunch of stupid questions, and as the parent or the adult, do you get angry at the child for not knowing? No, because your brain, your primitive brain, understands that little thing there that's running around does not know any better. It's beyond their comprehension to know this, and so it's your responsibility, or ideally it's your responsibility, to help nurture and grow that person. It's just that you forget that when the person gets older. And that is the biggest illusion that I believe humanity has, which is this weird idea that everybody, if you are 20 plus, you're considered an adult, therefore you are equal in intelligence. It's the dumbest thing ever. We have so many problems because we have this idea, we have this politically correct idea where we're sort of losing ground there as well. It used to be the case that we could objectively see that someone is fat or thin and make a distinction. Not doesn't mean that you have to make people feel bad about being one or the other, but we could say that there is a difference. We should have exactly the same perspective. It's more subtle when it comes to intelligence, but it's the same thing. If you have been working on something for 20 years and someone has not, well, then you are quote-unquote mentally fitter in that area, or you're more knowledgeable. And so people get very hostile in the spaces where you have people who have a lot of strong opinions about something being better, or someone being dumb, or someone being smart, and so forth, because usually in my experience it comes down to ego and sense of being correct. It's the reptile part of your brain that comes in, where you feel better by making someone else feel stupid, or you get annoyed at someone else for being stupid in your personal perspective, and then you allow those emotions to manifest themselves in a hostile communication system, a way of communicating. And this is where a lot of people talk about, if the communication in real life, face to face, is different from when you're on the internet, because just as people who are socially insecure usually prefer texting over talking on the phone, it is less it's less confrontational. It requires less of you in terms of communication to write text on the internet, where you are sort of pseudo-anonymous, or like it feels easier for people to express themselves the way they want when they're writing text, rather than when they have to have a face-to-face conversation, because all kinds of other communication barriers kick in at that point. And that is usually why you see more extreme language in forums and so forth. And as personal observation that I always think is interesting is that people have a tendency to take negative feedback in a very strong fashion. Is one of the reasons why we have so much negativity in the news. And we're also find it easier to express strong opinions and being more overt with our communication when we're on the internet, which sort of breeds, it becomes like almost a cycle where you respond stronger to negativity on the internet, or people being really up in your face about something, and you find it easier to communicate in that fashion, or it's easier for you to be that way, which creates this weird vicious cycle where you sort of it's almost like a two-way dialogue with sort of like how newspapers, as I was saying, they communicate this way through their articles and their headlines. But now you have other people writing the headlines to you over like Stack Overflow or these sorts of forums, and you in turn feel it's easier to do the same thing back, which means it sort of creates this weird like ping pong exponential growth of hostility, and that toxicity can be built up really, really quickly on forums, and it really comes down to exactly the same thing. I think this is correct, and I have this value system, and you are an idiot because you are either not as smart as I am or you have the wrong opinion. That's in essence what it comes down to most of the time. So what I want you to take away from this is that the reason why Stack Overflow and other sorts of programming places are enormously hostile is because humans, whatever it is, and trust me, I did martial arts for years. Do you have any idea how long it took for the mature quote-unquote martial artists around the world to just agree that, you know what, let's never start another forum thread about which system is the best? Because that's what the rookies are asking about. Okay, is karate better than boxing or taekwondo or whatever, or Krav Maga, etc., etc. These discussions, they never lead anywhere, and all it really does is it pits people against each other, and people get angry because some people are emotionally mature enough to understand that there are different perspectives on this, pros and cons, and a lot of people usually have the idea that you are wrong and I am right, and I'm going to fight you because you are wrong. And in a place such as the internet and like this sort of, as I was saying, it becomes very, very toxic very quickly, because as I said, you can communicate in a more hostile way without feeling as much need to adjust your behavior and your communication method as you would in real life, and you're also very sensitive of getting criticism back. And it's of course public, so the trolling system, like, it grows exponentially if you're not careful. So that's why I tell people, if you want to have good, honest conversations with people who are better equipped to help you out, it's better to put a little bit of go one level up from the forums, where the only thing you need in order to be part of that community is to have a login, and try to find like these sorts of more collaborative environments where people who have a little bit of seniority or maturity and so forth sort of have to prove that they are equipped to have a grown-up conversation. And that's usually my tip. These sort of like completely open forums are usually not the place where you first and foremost find the people who are really worth talking to. They are there, of course, but there's so much other stuff you have to go through to get to talk to those people usually. Have a great day.